All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen here. The poll will stay up for another few seconds or so. So if you haven't completed it, please click now. Going to stop sharing my screen so you can see my face a little bit better. And I'm going to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We're really excited to be here. And tremendously excited to have a really wonderful turnout from the Nantucket community and have a in-depth and I think really a great conversation about a resilient future for Nantucket. To set things off and provide kind of the foundation for the meeting tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Libby Gibson, who's going to make a couple of introductory remarks. And Libby, I think we'll have to unmute you there in a moment.
All right, I think I managed to do that.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. I'm Libby Gibson, Town Manager. I'm pleased to welcome you to this Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan Community Open House. Flooding and erosion are among Nantucket's biggest issues. While these are not new problems, we are starting to see an increasing dynamic that makes flooding and erosion worse. Sea level rise is causing both impacts to intensify as time goes on. To address these impacts, the town is developing a coastal resilience plan. We want the plan to have ample community input. This open house is one of the ways we hope to receive that input. The Coastal Resilience Plan is intended to be an all-island and all-county plan. Its major purpose is to increase the island's longevity. This comes with some major challenges. How do we maintain our historic character and environmental integrity with compatible solutions to flooding and erosion? These can be at odds with each other. Added to this, solutions must also be acceptable to the community and be sustainable in the face of sea level rise and climate change. Workable solutions can be challenging. Compromise and ingenuity will be needed by the people of Nantucket to address these challenges. We also need more than one type of solution. We may need infrastructure in the downtown area to limit the impacts of flooding while also maintaining a working waterfront in a historic district that works for our year-round community and visitors alike. Our beaches and their high quality are one of Nantucket's most well-known and endearing features. Green and gray infrastructure on our coastlines to reduce erosion impacts is another viable solution, but not the only way to go. We also need new policies and bylaws to deal with where and how we develop property in or close to flooding and eroding areas. These policies should lay the foundation for how Nantucket can deal with rising seas and other impacts of climate change. In developing a coastal resilience plan, we need to consider our resident population and visitors in equal measure. These two interlinked communities need the island to be a resilient place where we can reduce damage to property from flooding, erosion, or other coastal hazards while maintaining our historical and cultural features. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this important discussion. Your time and interest is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Libby. That was fantastic. And next, we're going to turn it over to Mary Longaker, who's the chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee for the town of Nantucket, who will provide some additional remarks.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Libby. Good evening, and thank you to everyone for attending. I'm Mary Longaker. As the chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, I'd like to call to order a meeting of the committee. The single purpose of this meeting is for committee members to attend this virtual open house for the Coastal Resilience Plan. Accordingly, the committee's meeting will automatically be adjourned when the event is concluded. Are there any other committees that need to call their meeting to order for having a quorum of representation tonight? I'm not anticipating any, Trevor, but
if that's the case, please let us know in the chat as folks are muted. So if there is another committee that needs to convene, let us know in the chat and we'll make space for that.
Great, thank you. This open meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. Before we begin the presentation, I've been asked to provide a brief description of the progress to date. In 2019, the town of Nantucket adopted an update of its natural hazard mitigation plan. One of the highest priority new recommendations was to develop a coastal resilience plan to address the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. At town meeting, we appropriated funds to hire consultants to create the coastal resilience plan. The town also hired Vince Murphy for the new position of coastal resilience coordinator and appointed the coastal resilience advisory committee. The committee members include Matt Fee as the representative from the Select Board, Fritz McClure as the representative from the Planning Board, Ian Golding as the representative from the Conservation Commission, Peter Brace as the representative from the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, Gary Beller as the representative from the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers, Dr. Jennifer Carberg as the representative from the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, and 3 members from the community at large, who are Dr. Sarah Traynor-Boyce, Graham Durovich, and me. The purpose of the committee is to work with a coastal resiliency coordinator to oversee the development of the coastal resilience plan and ensure that all areas of the island are represented. We also review existing and proposed regulations to include coastal resilience accommodations and identify any disconnects between regulations and practices and recommend ways to achieve alignment. And we regularly review information on sea level rise projections with regard to impact on the island. Last year, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee authored an interim recommendation, which the Select Board adopted in August, stating that all town departments, boards, commissions, and committees, and any service providers, contracted engineers, and consultants need to be aware of and need to use the NOAA high scenario to accommodate current storm surge as well as sea level rise in their decisions, deliberations, and planning. This policy will remain in place until the Coastal Resilience Plan is finalized. The full text of the policy is available on the committee's page of the town website. Despite the difficulties imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee and partners are committed to delivering the Coastal Resilience Plan this fall, just slightly more than 2 years after beginning work. Tonight's event is the first major opportunity for the public to participate, and we hope that people will continue to actively engage in the process over the next 8 months. However, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is not the only group working on preparing Nantucket for the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. Holly Backus, the town's preservation planner, is leading a project with the Craig Group called Resilient Nantucket Designs for Adaptation, which will provide guidelines and information for owners of historic properties to sensitively and appropriately adapt their buildings to resist flooding. And Remain Nantucket with the University of Florida is sponsoring the Envision Resilience Nantucket Challenge for selected university students, which asks them to come up with creative ideas for the downtown waterfront. An easy way to keep track of all 3 projects and others yet to come is by following announcements through www.acclimate.org. Acclimate is a consortium of organizations, including the town, Remain, and several local nonprofit groups, all invested in working together on solving the challenges the island faces from climate change. Once again, thank you to all of the presenters and attendees for joining us tonight. Trevor, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Libby. Just a note to everyone, if possible, to make sure that your full name is on the screen so that those members of the community know who's on the call tonight. You can do that by simply right-clicking on your square, and there should be an option to rename yourself. So with that, I'm going to reshare my screen here. So just one moment while I pull up the slide deck. And hopefully you can all see the a full screen of the entry slide here. So thank you, Mary and Libby, for that excellent introduction. And thank you again to everyone for joining us here tonight. My name is Trevor Johnson. I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm a senior resilience planner with Arcadis, the firm that is leading the coastal resilience planning process. I'll serve as the project manager for our consultant team and look forward to introducing the plan as well as the rest of our team here tonight. So before we begin, a little bit about how tonight's open house is going to work. We are obviously hosting this on Zoom, which will require attention to a few technical and logistical matters. First, please use the chat function, as many of you already have, to introduce yourself or ask questions during the presentation. We'll record these questions for follow-up. Second, during the Q&A at the end of this presentation, please use the raise hand function and wait to be called upon with your questions. We may not have time to get to everyone's questions tonight, but rest assured that everyone's questions will be answered in time. Third, if tonight's meeting abruptly ends for any reason, please be patient. Please try rejoining the meeting using the same link, and you'll also receive an email with instructions for rejoining. We don't expect this to happen, but if it does happen, please try to be patient and rejoin. Now, how will tonight's open house work? First, we'll provide an overview of the Coastal Resilience Plan. Next, we'll have an overview and tutorial for a new mobile engagement applications that we'll be launching next week that enables you to provide continuous feedback on the Coastal Resilience Plan. Then we'll have a short question and answer period. And then lastly, after a short break, we'll have structured breakout sessions for about 60 minutes and report outs, which provide an opportunity for you to tell us what you think is most important about Nantucket's resilience. So before we begin, let's do another short poll. Let's find out who's in the room tonight. So please respond in the next 60 seconds how you experience Nantucket. And if for any reason you cannot see the poll, you can respond in the chat. I'll read out the options. How do you experience Nantucket? I live on the island year round. I live on the island seasonally. I work on the island. I work on the island but live off island. I visit the island occasionally, and I have not been to Nantucket. Looks like we still have a couple responses coming in. Give it another second here. All right, let's look at the results. Great, looks like we have a great cross-section of folks. Majority live year-round, but a good number of folks who are seasonal residents of Nantucket. Great to see a variety of perspectives here represented. So let's keep moving. So what is the Coastal Resilience Plan? We start our work with a mission statement, and this is a statement about what it is that we are all working together to achieve by undertaking a coastal resilience planning process. The mission of the Coastal Resilience Plan is to draw on the cherished built and natural heritage of Nantucket to create a community-supported roadmap to implementation for a series of layered flood control and adaptation approaches that lessen the loss from storm surges and help the community adapt to rising seas and eroding coastlines. In coordination with ongoing adaptation and sustainability initiatives, the plan addresses the whole island and county while respecting the unique characteristics of each neighborhood. Driven by the inclusive and equitable engagement of all, the plan aspires to create social, environmental, and economic benefits and value to everyone who will share in Nantucket's future. Your input during the breakout sessions tonight will help us continually refine this mission statement as we progress. Accomplishing this mission will require your input, perspectives, and priorities to help define a long-term vision for Nantucket. To help create that vision, we need to provide you with some information, and that is what we're here tonight to do, to help answer these questions. What is the Coastal Resilience Plan? What are the risks facing Nantucket? What do we mean when we say resilience? How will the plan help Nantucket become more resilient? What have we heard from the community so far? And then how will we continue to work with you? And of course, as mentioned, we're here to listen. So we're very interested to hear, what are your priorities? How can this process work best for you? What are you most concerned about? And how can this process add value to and improve your quality of life? With that, let's talk a little bit about what the CRP is, Coastal Resilience Plan. If I say CRP, that's what I mean. The goal of the project is to develop a comprehensive plan to address coastal flooding, sea level rise, and erosion for the entire island. The process will include identifying important community assets, assessing vulnerability to future flooding along the coast, identifying actions to reduce flooding and erosion risk, evaluating these options, and developing resilience and adaptation responses that are prioritized and ready to begin the process of implementation by the town and other community members. At key moments like tonight, we'll be leading community engagement events and using other digital tools that give you the opportunity to respond and reflect on the plan's findings and recommendations. We know that Nantucket is a special place and that any recommendations for Nantucket's future must be founded in the unique conditions found across the island. For this reason, we developed a set of principles for the project, which are first, to honor the community heritage and identity throughout adaptation. We want to address resilience at multiple scales, from the building scale to the larger regional and ecological scales. We want the process to be driven by and based in inclusive and responsive community engagement, which is why we're here tonight. And then finally, bringing a commitment to implementation so that the recommendations of the plan can become reality. Our multidisciplinary team will carry out this work together, working in close collaboration with the town and with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Our team, is comprised of engineers, architects, landscape architects, ecologists, and planners from Arcadis, Stoss, One Architecture, and the Craig Group. Together, this team brings years of experience in resilience planning throughout New England, around the country, and indeed around the world. And our team leadership is represented on this slide, and many of them are on the call here with us tonight, and look forward to introducing them to themselves to you in our breakout sessions. I speak for our team when I say that we are all very excited to be working with you and very excited to be working with the Nantucket community on this very important project. We also want to recognize that the Coastal Resilience Plan builds on a significant amount of planning for resilience that has already occurred in recent years, including the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness process in 2019, the Hazard Mitigation Plan process in the same year, and other studies. Our goal is to honor and build on this work, not to duplicate or supplant it. We also have several studies running in parallel to the CRP, namely Resilient Nantucket and the Envision Resilience Nantucket. We are working very closely with these partners to ensure each process is complementary and beneficial to all groups working towards a more resilient Nantucket. And on that note, we are very happy to encourage everyone on this call to please take the Envision Resilience Nantucket survey, which has been extended and is open until Monday. You'll have a chance to provide input that will be shared not only to the Envision Resilience Nantucket Challenge, but also help inform the Coastal Resilience Planning process and the Resilient Nantucket process and other resilience planning initiatives that are slated for the years to come. You'll also have a chance to be entered into a raffle for a gift card to a local coffee shop. So you can visit the Envision Resilience Nantucket website for more information on how to complete the survey. Having set the stage, now let's talk a little bit about what hazards and risks Nantucket faces. We begin the CRP process by working to understand coastal hazards and the risks that they pose to Nantucket. Nantucket and the people who live and work here are no strangers to the forces of the ocean. The work of planning for a resilient Nantucket must confront coastal storms that are increasing in frequency and intensity, bringing the impacts of storm surge to our front doors, as many members of the community I'm sure are well aware. Coastal erosion of our bluffs, dunes, and beaches continues to rapidly progress, threatening homes, infrastructure, and natural resources. And sea level rise, which will exacerbate island-wide coastal and tidal flooding and erosion, which will happen over time. Now, these risks are not new to Nantucket. Low-lying areas such as downtown, Brant Point, Nantucket, and Pulpus Harbor have historically experienced repeated flooding during high tides. Storm surges due to coastal storms like nor'easters and hurricanes have also affected these and other areas. And in recent memory, winter storms Riley and Grayson in 2018 caused widespread flooding and erosion, damaging buildings, inundating roads, and affecting natural resources. Through modeling and analysis, we can map the projected areas where flooding from storm surge may have impacts today and into the future. This helps us plan for these risks in the future and how to address their impacts. Here we have a map of Nantucket showing the 1% annual chance or 100-year floodplain. This is the area that has a 1% chance of flooding in any given year today. This and the next maps are based on the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model. Over time, with projected sea level rise, the risk of flooding will increase so that new areas of Nantucket are subject to this same degree or probability of risk as today's vulnerable areas. The darker orange colors on here show areas that may be exposed to flooding in the 2030s. And here in the 2050s. And finally, in the 2070s. Again, the 1% annual chance or 100-year storm. And as we can see, the projected risk of flooding from coastal storms is significant on Nantucket, and it's increasing over time with sea level rise. Areas of Nantucket that have never experienced flooding from storms will be increasingly vulnerable in the future. And it's not just risk of flooding from coastal storms that is increasing. Sea level rise will also increase the elevation of annual, monthly, and daily high tides. Here we see the daily high tide level today for Nantucket's downtown. As sea levels rise, so too do the daily high tide, causing nuisance issues at first in many low-lying areas. But increasingly, over time, this sea level rise will cause significant disruptions to everyday life. As the coastal edge is more frequently breached and streets become impassable, storm sewers are overwhelmed, and properties see water at their doorsteps. Over time, these impacts become increasingly disruptive and reduce quality of life. Here we see potential high tide in the 2070s. And here, areas of inundation with daily high tide in 2100. These data are based on the high projections for sea level rise from the state of Massachusetts. And while there's a significant amount of uncertainty related to the pace of sea level rise, particularly by the end of the century, we know now that future tides will be higher than today's and that steps must be taken to prepare. And finally, erosion. Erosion is exacerbated by other hazards and also poses new risks of its own. This is a natural process that creates direct risks to buildings, infrastructure, and natural resources, especially during major storm events. Rates of erosion and shoreline change are increasing over time due to sea level rise and the potential for more frequent and intense storms. As a result, beaches, dunes, and bluffs are changing, affecting access to the beach and threatening existing buildings and infrastructure. Why are we taking the time to walk through this? Because living with water and evolving shorelines are part of what it means to spend time on Nantucket. But climate change is accelerating natural processes and causing storms and other events that we're simply not prepared for. And so we must take urgent actions to adapt Nantucket to climate change and ensure the island is safe and resilient for future generations. And that is the purpose of the Coastal Resilience Plan. So now let's do another poll. Curious to know what are the risks and issues that concern you the most? Great. We'll give it another minute or another couple seconds here. Great. Well, really interesting to see the distribution across these. It's obviously a significant number of participants here are concerned about erosion, but then we also have a significant amount of concern about large storms and coastal flooding, as well as nuisance flooding. Thanks everybody for filling out the poll. So I want to take a moment here and define what we mean when we say resilience. It's a term that's used a lot, and I think it's worthwhile to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say it. I mentioned a lot about risk just then and hazards, and I think resilience is the other side of that, and it's our ability in a context where risk is increasing and evolving. It's our ability to change, adapt, and respond. That is what defines our resilience. Resilience is thinking about our community's ability to respond and adapt in 5 core domains. The first is physical, which refers to our buildings and our infrastructure. The second is social, which refers to the well-being of the people who comprise our communities. Governance is our systems of decision-making and our political leadership and our ability to make decisions that are truly in line with adaptive goals. Economic are our jobs, businesses, and the way that we fund adaptation. And then finally, environmental are our natural processes, places, and processes, and how we leverage them towards a more resilient future. For the purposes of the Coastal Resilience Plan, resilience means more than risk reduction. It means multi-layered, multi-purpose protection. So think about how flood protection might provide additional value to the community and quality of life beyond simply reducing risk. It means systems level thinking. So think about infrastructure and the places that you rely on every day and how these work together as part of an overall system and what it would mean to make these systems more resilient. It means adaptability over time. So think about what is needed to create places and infrastructure that can continue to change with changing conditions. And finally, it means attention to equity. Think about the members of the community who are least equipped to respond and rebound when disaster strikes. The CRP will be using these approaches and these paradigm really to define a roadmap to a comprehensive resilience for Nantucket. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Amy Whitesides from STOSS, who's going to talk a little bit about how the CRP is aimed at making Nantucket more resilient. Amy?
Great, thanks, Trevor. So if you can go to the next slide. Our first step is really to complete a detailed review of coastal hazards and the risks that they pose today and into the future. We'll look at coastal flooding due to storms, tidal flooding from sea level rise, and coastal erosion patterns across the island. The analysis is based on the latest science and the best available data for Nantucket to be sure we're making good decisions. This work is currently underway and is running in parallel with our public engagement process. Next. Coastal hazard analysis informs the risks and vulnerability analysis, which is comprehensive and looks at the anticipated impacts from flooding and erosion across types of buildings, infrastructure, and sectors. So this includes homes and businesses, community assets, essential services and the economy, and then community lifelines like fire stations or healthcare clinics, as well as natural resources like wetlands and protected habitats. Next. Based on the risk and vulnerability analysis and the data gathered from the community engagement, the CRP will draw on a toolkit of potential coastal resilience approaches. This toolkit will build on our understanding of Nantucket's environment and character, as well as our team's experience. The toolkit will include options for protecting infrastructure and buildings through both hard and soft methods. So this includes flood walls, levees, breakwaters, even raising roads or parks. Next. Nature-based solutions can also be a really valuable tool to create resiliency on the island. We understand the importance of Nantucket's natural environment, both ecologically and culturally, and we'll be considering opportunities to enhance and/or protect the environment, both as a means to protect buildings and infrastructure from flooding, but also to protect critical environmental resources and, where appropriate, expand habitats that might be impacted by coastal storms and sea level rise. And critical to this will be the creation of recommendations on new policies and regulatory approaches that can help to advance the implementation of the tools I just described. Improving coordination among different actors on the island will help to ensure that the funds and efforts toward resilience on the island are building on each other and physically connect where necessary to create continuity of protection and work together to result in a bigger collective vision, not just a series of small interventions. And lastly, we'll provide guidance and education for homeowners to take action to protect their assets and promote resiliency at the individual property level. That'll hand it back to Trevor.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So each of these steps will be integrated into a detailed roadmap that lays out a comprehensive plan for a resilient shoreline on Nantucket. This includes a clear understanding of coastal risks, as we discussed. It includes an engaged community, a community that's engaged in conversations about these risks and what they can do, what you can do working together about it. It includes an evaluation, detailed evaluation of options for increasing resilience, adapting to a changing climate, and enhancing value. And finally, and in culmination, it includes a roadmap of prioritized steps that Nantucket can take towards implementation, which is scheduled for delivery in September of 2021, which is when our planning process will conclude. The goal is providing recommendations for immediate next steps, conceptual designs for technical solutions, potential policy revisions, permitting and regulatory guidance, an understanding of the costs and benefits of recommended actions, including who benefits and when, assistance for the town in seeking state and federal funding to construct what's recommended, and finally, ways for the community to stay involved in this process moving forward. So in the early stages of this project, we've been investing a lot of time into working to speak with many town departments and organizations that have a key role to play in the future of the Coastal Resilience Plan. And we've learned a lot so far that I want to touch on as a foundation for the breakout groups. The first theme is the environment. We've heard a lot about the need for consideration of and a preference for nature-based solutions. We've heard about the need to understand the ecological impacts of climate change. So how will rising seas change the ecology of Nantucket, not just affecting built or hard infrastructure? And building on that, the need to protect and enhance these natural resources. And then finally, the need to think about and integrate sustainability and climate change mitigation goals into the adaptation and resilience planning. The second theme relates to community. So there's obviously a need to draw on and respect and honor Nantucket's natural, historic, and aesthetic character. We need solutions that align with what really makes Nantucket special and why people love the island. We want to work with property owners to equip them with the information and guidance that they need to make sound decisions. We know that much of the property on Nantucket is owned privately. While we're providing guidance to the town about investments they can make, we also want to equip private property owners with tools that they can use to adapt their own properties and preserve and safeguard their homes and families. We want to pursue comprehensive community engagement. And then finally, we want to think about the tension between growth and the need to potentially reduce development in certain areas over time. On risks, we want to look at the full suite, as we've already discussed. So from nuisance flooding to coastal erosion to coastal flooding from storms, and think about the impacts to critical infrastructure and also to emergency access needs and critical supply lines. We're well aware that Nantucket is an island and that the need to get supplies and other necessary materials to the island from the mainland is of critical importance. And then coordination. So Planning, we want planning that leads to action. It's often said that plans sit on shelves, and the goal here is not to have a plan that sits on the shelf, but actually equips the decision makers and the community with what you need to take action immediately. We want to think about regulatory changes, so thinking about changes to the zoning or wetlands ordinances, I should say. Policy consistencies toward a common goal. So making sure that all regulations and policies that the town have are working in the same direction to accomplish common goals. And on that note, also interdepartmental coordination, the need for all of the town governments, entities, departments, boards, and commissions to work together towards achieving resilient outcomes. And then finally, and relatedly again, the integration of goals between plans and planned projects. So now another poll. We're curious to know which theme is highest priority to you, and we can continue the conversation in the breakout groups in just a few minutes. $15 more seconds here. All right, it looks like we've gotten a response from most. Well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the top vote getter was reducing coastal risks. That's great. That's very much something that we will be working to achieve through this process. But also, very, very glad to see, attention to the other themes as well, which is certainly a key part of our mission on this project. So the last section of the presentation here is really about how we're going to continue to work together with you throughout this process. So this is our schedule for community engagement over the coming months. As we mentioned, we began the project in late October, early November, and we'll be continuing through September. You can see we're now in late January and undertaking kind of our second, what we call phase of community engagement. We'll also have another community open house sometime in this spring or early summer. We would love to be able to be meeting tonight in person, and we would hope maybe that there's a possibility of doing that this summer as well. But we'll have to be obviously flexible and responsive to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. But in any event, no matter how we meet, we will be meeting again for a community-wide open house, and that'll be an opportunity to vet and discuss potential resilient solutions and to seek input on our preliminary recommendations and proposals. In between, you will have other opportunities to engage digitally, and we'll talk about one of those tools in a moment. But we'll also have other opportunities for different types of engagement. We know that engaging in a virtual setting often makes it easier for people to participate, but not necessarily as easy necessarily to provide your input. So we want to provide a variety of ways for the community to do that. And these are just some examples of how we might think about engaging with you in the months ahead. So potential for scheduling smaller group chats, potentially by subject matter or geographic area. As I mentioned, we'll have an open house number 2. The idea of developing meetings in a bag so that community leaders can host their own small group meetings without the consultant team there, collect input, and then bring that back to us, which we can integrate into our analysis. Web-based surveys, and then finally the Iris app, which is something that we'll now talk about. So next week, we'll be launching a mobile application that is customly developed for the Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan process. And this is a portal that you can use to provide input and learn about the project from anywhere, anytime on your phone. We're in the final stages of refining and releasing the tool, and we have a preview here tonight. I do just want to note that this is one tool among the suite that we will use to keep you informed, and by no means is the only way that you'll be able to engage with the coastal resilience planning process. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone and also the screen share over to Beto Altamirano, who's the CEO and co-founder of IRIS, who's joined us to share the application and talk about its functionality.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Carly, for all your work. And we're very excited to be working with such an awesome crowd. We have more than 100 people here joining us, so this is very exciting. I'm the co-founder and CEO at IRIS. We're a tech company that works with cities and organizations like Arcadis to better engage communities around the world. I mean, clients include the city of San Antonio, Mexico City, and so many other cities. And now we're working with Nantucket. However, the tool that we're about to launch is going to be tested and used first by all of you who are on this call. I mean, you're going to be the early adopters. So this is great. It makes us very excited. So now we're going to showcase the application. And here we go. So the first thing to do, right, with the application is to sign in and sign up. And Pooja, can you show the application? Are you showing it? Okay, excellent. Okay, so to get started, with the application, you create an account, right? You sign in and you use your email address and password. After that, you log in to see the project homepage for the Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan. The homepage includes a menu of options that allows users to navigate to other sections within the app, including providing input, completing surveys, viewing project news, and more. To provide input about the project, you click input and you can click on the plus button located at the bottom right corner of the page. As you can see, it's very simple. This is a very simple tool to use. And that's the idea. We want to create a friendly user experience for everyone, right? So let's provide input by location. You click on provide input by location to provide feedback about specific locations in your area. Let's imagine that the user would like to provide feedback about improving a flood-prone area. First, you choose your location. The app will automatically geolocate your location. You can also type in the address or location name in the address bar. Or you can drag and drop the map pinpoint to your desired location. Next, choose if you like to leave feedback about something you love, something that you want to change, or something that you want to add. Here, we'll choose something we want to change. Click next, then type in your feedback in the text box. Click on attach photos to attach photos relevant to your input. Last, click on the submit button to send your feedback. As you can see, this was flawless. 15 seconds, 20 seconds it takes you to provide any input related to a location or area in your community. Now, you can also respond to surveys. I think this is really exciting for Arcadis and all the stakeholders in this project, because it's another way to provide input by completing surveys. From provide input menu, you click on respond to surveys to complete project related surveys. You select a survey from the list. Then you complete the survey questions and submit your response. Now let's go to provide input by category. Another way to provide input is by providing input by category. From the provide input menu, click on the provide input by category. Let's imagine that the user would like to provide feedback about a better solution for flood protection. Here you can choose from a list of categories related to project planning and progress, local infrastructure, and the environment. Choose a relevant category. Here we're going to choose flood protection solutions. Choose the relevant subcategory. Next, we'll choose what I want to see happen. Next, type in your input in the text box, just like providing input by location. You can also attach photos. Last, click on the submit button next to your feedback. And that's how you send that feedback immediately. It took 20, 15 seconds. Now let's jump to events. This is interesting, right? Because Arcades and all the stakeholders can, update you with events happening, in-person events or virtual. Of course, because of COVID today, a lot of the events are virtual, but you'll get notified about everything happening in real time through the app. So let's click on the events section. You click on events to see a list of upcoming in-person or virtual events. You click on the events from the list to view additional event details. Clicking on Save to My Events saves the event to your event section. And here you can follow up on all the events that are happening that are saved under your profile. Now let's click the About section. From the homepage, you can click the About section to view additional information about this specific project. You also have a feed, a news feed, kind of like, Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, right? We're making it dynamic, so it's also relevant and fun to use, right? So from the homepage, you can also access your feed. The feed allows you to see all the input provided by other app users. You can click on a post on the feed to see the full details that someone else has provided. You can also view information about project news and updates. I really like the project news section because Arcades and other stakeholders can upload information regarding that project, and so you can be updated every day or every week. You also have a user profile. On the homepage, you can click on the profile icon on the top left corner of the screen to access your profile. You can click on the pencil icon to edit your personal information as well. You can click on My Engagement tab to view and track all the input that you have submitted on the application. You can click on My Events tab to view and follow up on saved events as well. You also get notifications, right? You can turn them off or you can turn them on, whatever you want, right? But at the end of the day, I like notifications because it keeps you updated with everything happening on the mobile app. So on the homepage, you can click on the bell icon to access all the notifications. And here you'll receive notifications for upcoming events or new content that is added to the app and more, of course. You also have a side menu. So we're making it dynamic enough so that you can access all the information easily, right? So the menu allows you to easily navigate other app sections, your profile, resource links, and app FAQs. That concludes the presentation, but I'm very excited about introducing this platform with the Nantucket community because you're going to be the first users of this product that we've been working on for the past year. And we really believe in improving the quality of life in communities, right? Community engagement is at the heart of what we do. So of course, since it's a new product, it might have a couple of bugs here and there, but through your feedback, we're going to make the product better. And we're always going to be providing updates to make it a better product to use in community building processes. So that concludes the presentation. Trevor, back to you. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask. We're here to support on any way.
Thank you, Beto. Fantastic. And just a couple things to stress there. One, this is certainly not the only way to engage. It is a tool in a toolbox of ways to engage. We're also available by email. We'll have surveys that are not through the app. I know Vince is always available to chat with folks. So not the only way to provide input, but one way that folks can provide input. And just a reminder that it's not in the App Store now, but it will be next week. And we'll be sending out an email to everybody who registered for this event to just let you know when it's there and ready for use. So with that, actually, I'm sure there are plenty of questions. So we're going to pause now to answer a few of them. So if you have questions about the IRIS app or about the coastal resilience planning process, please feel free to raise your hand and we will choose a few. We won't get to every question here because we do have a full agenda, and I think we're more or less running on time, which is fantastic. So we have time for 4 or 5 questions here.
So Trevor, I see that someone asked if there's going to be limits on the feedback or that you can give. So there's no limits. You can give as much feedback as you want, right? So that's the interesting, part of this platform, right? That you can be at home and you can provide feedback. You can use the tool to better engage with the stakeholders of, this project. So no limit on the feedback. And I hope that answers Neil's question.
Great. Other questions? It looks like we have a raised hand here. One moment.
Trevor, I'd also
Yes.
like to respond to the question. So this is Carly Foster. I'm the project director. Someone said that some feedback could be buried by if someone posted the same thing over and over again. You should know that while this is a really useful data collection tool and it's going to allow us to collect location specific data and automatically sort of analyze and complete data analytics, the project team is going to be actively monitoring the app, and we will be publishing to the newsfeed. So we'll be able to track feedback by user, also by user's location, if that's enabled. And then it also has protections in place for any kind of trolling or sabotage. So everything is sort of curated by the project team, and the project team has access. So it's more of a way to facilitate continuous two-way engagement than provide any kind of substitute for any other possible ways of engaging.
Carly, I want to add one more thing. So think of this as a productivity tool, right? It's not a social media platform per se, right? It's a productivity tool that is going to enable the communication, right, between the stakeholders and the community. And to Carly's point, the dashboard that Arcadis and other stakeholders are going to be using will allow them to better understand, and interact with the community.
Great, thank you. I think Bill Greider has raised his hand, and I tried to unmute you, so hopefully you're able to speak now and have your question.
Sure. Thank you. Let me lower my hand so that I was successful about that. Okay.
Terrific.
So thank you for taking my question. I apologize if my question is a little out of sync, but trying to have one leg in a competing Conservation Commission hearing that has a lot to do exactly with what you're talking about. The only thing that's been good about COVID is that you're able to go to multiple meetings. Unfortunately, they're all at the same time. We submitted, Nantucket Conservation Association represents well over 500 homeowners that are looking out not only for Nantucket, but Nantucket in general. And so we've been working for several years now on looking at erosion and resiliency. And so we've been doing some workshops of our executive board, and we came up with just a bevy of items, and we started to get ready to submit them for your study. And then all of a sudden, it's amazing how something stares you right in the face and you forget it. But we happened to review the municipal vulnerability report that you mentioned. And one thing that struck us that, yes, there are concerns about losing access to beaches and docks and boat ramps and all that. But when we looked at that map, the most startling thing whacked us in the head 2 days ago or 3 days ago was, if we don't do something as a community with what's now called, still called first bridge, second bridge, which is really first culvert, second culvert, because there used to be actual bridges there. And one short-term fix was to make culverts. Well, if you look at that map in that plan I just mentioned, it shows that it is only a matter of time before we lose access to Nantucket Road from the landfill west. That's a huge, huge issue. It's not as vital as losing downtown, because obviously that's our center, but it's a huge, huge issue that somehow, I don't know if your tool that you're talking about and module building will address that, but we would really stress that is a very, very integral part of dealing with the coastal resiliency message. And so I want to thank you for allowing us to stick that in there. And we look forward to seeing how things work out here.
Thanks, Bill. That's a great note and great point. And we're definitely thinking about island-wide access and how these risks and hazards may impede access to certain parts of the island over time. So definitely part of the plan. I think the next question is from Dick Veit. So I think I unmuted you there. So hopefully you're able to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I have property in a house on Tuckernuck, and I was one of the earlier speakers. I think it might have been Amy Whiteside, showed a number of alternative ways of dealing with these issues. She mentioned, or in the graphic, it showed a natural reef. I wonder if you could comment on what that is, and is that one of the options being considered for anywhere on Nantucket?
Yeah, I mean, I'll turn it over to Amy in a second, but I would just firstly, the kind of options that are shown on the slides are just examples, not necessarily the full range of things that we'll be considering. But yeah, we do. So just to sort of paint a portrait of our process, we certainly start with the widest possible set of potential strategies and approaches, right? So that we're considering all potentially viable options for increasing resilience. And then through our analysis of the existing conditions and the risk and what is technically feasible, then we start to narrow that field of options down to a set of solutions that we would actually want to recommend as part of an adaptation roadmap. So Amy, do you have anything to add about that particular solution?
I think I would just say that, beyond that, as Trevor mentioned, we would want to be, aligning those potential solutions with the places where they really are appropriate for the risk. And that we would also, as a solution like that would move forward, it would be done in concert with ecologists, engineers who really can adapt that to the location. So there isn't necessarily just one version of what that might look like. It could be, a whole range of different kinds of kind of nature-based solutions that could be in water or, right on the coast that help. I generally are tending to help more with wave attenuation and kind of softening of those impacts rather than necessarily sea level rise, though you can do, a bit of both depending on how the final design would be.
At Tucker, thank you. At Tuckernuck specifically, reducing wave impact would make a big difference.
Great. Any other questions here? We may have time for one more.
Two people have a hand up. I can't see both.
Tobias, I'm going to unmute you or ask you to unmute Tobias here.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, thanks, Trevor, and thanks everyone for jumping on. Just really quickly, Trevor, I wanted to ask you, through other planning processes, we're looking at kind of a short-term problem of sea level rise and how it impacts the community. Long-term, we're seeing some pretty dramatic numbers as far as sea level rise. Are part of this plan going to include mitigation policies for reducing carbon emissions to keep sea level rise reasonable? We're seeing 6-8 feet by 2100. That'll be my kids and grandkids. What would you recommend policies in place to try to keep us under 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, while we're putting in place various mechanisms to deal with the water rising?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think we often look at the projections for sea level rise for 2100, right? Because that's sort of what's offered by the scientists and what's currently being projected. But sea level rise isn't going to stop in 2100, right? It's going to continue. And I think on the resilience and adaptation side, that's why it's of the utmost importance to build in adaptability into the solutions so that solutions can continue to change depending on how risk changes over time. But on the climate mitigation front, It's not a core part of our project here. The town is also involved separately in climate action planning to try to increase sustainability from Nantucket's perspective. I would say that a lot of the potential solutions that we would look at may have co-benefits that include climate change mitigation. So sequestering carbon, providing other kinds of potential benefits that reduce emissions of carbon into the atmosphere. So it's not a core focus, but it's certainly a potential kind of benefit of the things that we would recommend, and certainly looking to work in alignment with the climate action planning from the town. And I think also, hopefully, I know the new administration has a significant focus on climate change mitigation, and hoping that there's some leadership at the federal level as well on that front. We can maybe take one more quick question here, and then we'll have to move on. Ron, excuse me. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, I have, can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
First of all, Trevor and all the project managers, I can't tell you how sincerely grateful I am that you have undertaken this project. But as I think tonight will demonstrate, I'm not sure you know how enormous the project is. And my neighbors will let you know from east to west. I want to give a shout out to Tom Erickson and the folks at the Smith Point and the Nantucket associations. I have already moved my house once, and I moved it to the wall. I can't go anywhere else. Since 2007, I'm happy to say the beach is built up in Nantucket. This is the last house on the western end. There's somebody in Tuckanuck, so that's even more extreme. But the issues that we're having, everybody who's on this call is here, I'm sure, because they have their own issues. And I'm not sure, and this is, I'm looking forward to breakout and further conversations. I'm not sure how this project can deal with everyone's individual issues. I saw one comment that somebody's concerned about the house going over the bluff. It's an immediate concern for so many of us. And all I want to say is thank you, thank you, thank you for having done this. Let's hope that we can find some real solutions. Did I say thank you? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is not lost on us. I will say that much. We don't take any of this work lightly. And I think we're very aware that there's a lot of work to be done, and also that these conversations aren't easy, right? And there's not always going to be full agreement amongst everybody on what the right solutions are. So part of our job is to work through that to some extent. So I'm just going to share my screen again here as we transition into a little briefing on what the breakout groups will include. And then I think I'm sharing my wrong screen. Excuse me, one moment. Okay, this should work. So, okay. So we're going to transition into breakout groups. We'll have a brief break before we do that, so folks can grab a glass of water or use the bathroom. But the focus of the breakout groups, which will again last about 60 minutes, will cover 3 different topics, and you'll be facilitated through this using a tool called Google Jamboard, which the facilitators in each breakout will walk you through. The topics are mapping, flooding, and erosion, understanding your community priorities and values, and really thinking about the long-term vision for Nantucket. What does it look like in 10, 20, 50, and 70 years? And then answering questions about the process and wrapping up with takeaways. And we'll have a very brief report out at the end of the breakouts once the breakouts conclude. And I just want to cover also just a set of community guidelines that would like everybody to keep in mind during the breakout groups. These are important to maintaining a orderly and really meaningful and helpful conversation. So the first is that we want to acknowledge everybody's voice and time. Obviously, you're all here. This is taking your time. So we want to make sure that we're giving it full credit and making sure that everybody has a chance to share their perspectives. So if you find yourself speaking frequently, or you may want to consider opening the floor to other group members. We want to hear what everybody has to say. We'd like for everybody to speak from their own experience. We want to know exactly what Nantucket means to you. If there are several group members with things to share, we would hope that people can use the raise hand function in the breakouts, and a facilitator will call on you. And then finally, if you're able and willing to, please do consider turning on your camera, as we'll be in a smaller group setting, and hopefully can have more of a kind of community-driven conversation. And if you would like to leave the breakout room at any time, you can just click return to main session. We'll have a member of our team stationed there to answer any questions about the Zoom call and the process, and alleviate any concerns you have. And then if you would like to leave the meeting entirely, you can click leave meeting, which is separate from return to main session. If you do mistakenly leave the meeting, you can use the same link to come back, and you'll be placed in the breakout room. So with that, we're going to take a short 5-minute break. When you come back, you should find yourself in a breakout room with your facilitators.
Okay, there we go.
Hopefully getting taken back from a breakout room is always kind of a abrupt and discombobulating experience. So hopefully everybody had a great productive conversation. I just want to let everybody know that we're approaching the end of our scheduled time. So we'll try to do report outs as quickly as possible here. I will, everybody's busy. So if you need to drop at 8, totally fine. More than welcome to, obviously. I'm going to stick around for a little bit afterwards if anybody has questions or wants to discuss anything in more detail after the report out. So with that, let's do report outs. If you can try to keep just, very high level, 3 bullet points about what was discussed. Try to be under a minute if you can. And we'll start with group 1. You may need to raise your hand if you're
That's Holly. Holly's
okay, great.
Report out for us.
Yes. Just a moment while they get unmuted.
Thank you. So 3 bullet points. We would need a ecological natural resources are important. Our whole island approach and perspective is important, and having sustainable ways to do things that are easily implementable. I think, and history, protection of history was the talking points. I think we spoke a lot. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Holly. And excellent job modeling good behavior on the concise report out. So group 2?
Peter, could you do that for us, the report out for group 2?
There we go. I'm asking you to unmute.
So everything that we talked about?
Just the main 3 points.
The main 3 points, okay. Well, definitely the erosion of the South Shore, the loss of our beaches. We talked a lot about renewable energy. Can't just do it in 3 points. Protecting our vulnerable habitats. Sorry, you caught me flat-footed. I didn't realize that I was going to be speaking for the group. You guys get all the Post-its, so.
Kim, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, we also talked about preservation of the economy and trying to make sure that people still have places to live, affordable housing, affordable food, also transportation, making sure that people can get where they need to go when they need to get there, and get what they need to get as well. And then also we discussed a little bit about making sure that we are protecting our more vulnerable habitats, especially the ones that are world protected, was one of the topics that we discussed as well.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Peter, as well. Group 3.
We actually did not identify a reporter, so I can just briefly summarize the wide-ranging conversation that we had. It was really great to hear all the feedback, but some of the items we touched on were environmental, cultural, and economic sustainability, and really finding solutions that support the tourism industry and the year-round residents, as well as impacting not only and really changing the scope of erosion and flooding for the future, but the ability to really galvanize interdisciplinary change across the community, especially through different groups and through different public outreach mechanisms. So we really talked about a lot of different ways to defend the island as well. So yeah, it was just a great conversation. So I want to thank everyone as well.
Thanks so much. Group 4.
Hi, Trevor. Similarly, we didn't identify someone, so Amy and I are going to take it together, if that's all right. So I'm just going to super duper quickly say there was 3 main points that I suppose I took away. Be open to change, or more accurately, probably be prepared for change. Education was one of the big themes that came up in a very eclectic conversation, and it also comes down to sustainability, and that sustainability was with a big S and covered a great many things from habitats right through to shoreline change, housing sustainability, and many other points. Amy, would you like to add?
Vince, you did a fantastic job without the stickies and hit all the points. I think the only thing I would add is just that I love the way this was phrased, that nothing is off the table. We need to look at everything.
Great. I think we're on group 5 now, if I'm keeping count correctly.
Yeah, we had a great discussion. Ron's going to do our report out, and we probably didn't stick with the 3. We had a few more than that. So Ron, you want to share?
Ron may need to be unmuted. Let's see here.
Yeah, probably.
There we go. Ron Russo, I assume. There we go.
Yeah, I got it. What's worse than a lawyer who's muted? We had a very, very full discussion. Everybody participated. What did we take away from it? What's really important about Nantucket are the beaches, the culture, and the history. We are against the wall, so we need to document what may not be here in 20 years. The Philbricks of the world, who could catalog, photograph what may be lost, should be preserved. And what really came out of this is the time for discussion and talk is over. Action is needed. We're at the wall. There are parts of Nantucket that are going underwater as we speak, particularly Washington Avenue extension. We're thrilled that we're doing this, but now is the time to get the work done. We have to move. Lisa?
That pretty much says it all. I think access was important. Beaches are important. Understanding the full natural and cultural heritage was important. Some really good input from folks.
Great. And group 6, which was my group. So Rachel is going to be the report out for us. You should be on. Yeah, you should be unmuted now.
Okay. Just chime in if I miss anything. But we hit on a lot of the same topics as other people, but topics were probably preserving essential Nantucket. So the historic character and natural beauty and public access came up. Sustainability was another huge theme for us, the importance of low impact and energy efficient living, doing the most we can here to reduce our impacts and reduce rise. We definitely talked about erosion and flooding issues, Nantucket, Sconset, and the downtown. And there's a huge emphasis on action as well. People looking for bold pilot projects to see what is possible, because the scale of this can feel overwhelming. And so jumping in and trying just about anything at this point seems like a good idea.
Great, that covered it.
Okay.
And finally, Group 7.
All right, and Group 7 muscled Barbara Bunn into being our speaker. I just tried to unmute you, Barbara.
Did I just unmute myself successfully?
You did, you're here, and thank you so much for speaking on our behalf.
Okay, well, we had a heavy number, a heavy proportion of people who have been on the island for very, very long in very, very erosion-prone parts of the island. And so we spent a lot of time talking about changes that people had seen. We talked about values of the island, particularly access to water and the beaches. And we also talked about how there has been change in the sense of community. There is still a strong core community on the island, but it doesn't cover everybody. And that created some concerns about people who want to fix their part and not the whole island, and not the key problems like affordable housing, like making it possible for the next generation and the one after that to be able to live here. So those are economic issues of giving people the ability to continue to enjoy what Nantucket has been.
Thank you, Barbara. And then I think I would just add, and you had mentioned this before, Barbara, that there's so much interdependence between coastal flood risk and other needs on the island, and that we should be working toward a whole community and engaging in community building activities through these processes. Affordable housing was a key theme, affordability on the island, and then also maintaining awareness of potential unintended consequences of any of our actions, which is perhaps maybe a counterpoint to the urgency, sort of finding a way to ensure that we're also thinking through and thinking through any potential unintended consequences.
Well, and maybe I'll jump in and say this was not my point, but we did hear, for example, about the consequences of introducing a fast ferry, which were not what was anticipated when that kind of service was introduced. And nobody had anticipated what it would do in terms of allowing workers to come just for a day and all kinds of things. So there was a lot of concern about, let's not do things that mess this up unnecessarily.
That's great. All right, well, that's the end of the report out and the end of our open house. Amazingly, we've ended basically on time, which is, I think, a team effort, and I thank all of you for being part of that success, and also just in general being a part of this open house. I think, this is very just very inspirational and very helpful to the project team. And I think I said it before that, this is not the end of the conversation, but the beginning. A door is opening. So the call to action is, if you're able to use your smartphone to download the Iris app when it's released next week, you should get an email about it. Please do tell your friends, family, and neighbors about it, whether they're on the island or off. And we'll continue to see many of you in the months ahead. So thanks again to everybody. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to hang on and ask any questions or chat about anything. But everyone else is free to go and have some dinner or spend the rest of your night however you like to. So thanks again, and look forward to talking soon.
Thanks, Trevor.
Oh, and this was recorded, by the way. It'll be posted on the town's website. And I think Vince was going to make a few comments as well.
Just super quickly to thank a few people who really made tonight possible. Particular thanks to Libby Gibson for joining and giving the introduction, as well as Mary Longaker, the chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, for giving her history of that group. Special thanks to Trevor Johnson and all in Arcadis, Stoss, One Architecture, and the Craig Group, and especially thanks to the 168-ish thereabouts people that joined and participated tonight, because that feedback, particularly from the breakout rooms, is the most useful part of tonight and will help shape the Coastal Resilience Plan. And thank you, everyone.
Very well said. So,
thank you so much. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
I'm also willing to hang around for a while to answer questions.
You have a hand up from Tobias.
Yeah. Hey, Tobias. Yeah. Let me unmute you there. We could probably unmute everybody, actually, if I'm not sure if that's possible. Anise, go ahead, Tobias.
Thank you, Trevor. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank you and all your team. I've been a member of town government for, in a past life, and it's great to see so many people engaging over Zoom. And so I just want to commend your whole team. Watch out, we might want to hire you all full time to conduct various meetings in the town. So just on that point, thank you. But I just wanted to further reiterate, I think a lot of the conversation in our breakout session and just themes I heard throughout the evening were around how, as a community, we really want to be focused on the people of the island. We want resiliency long-term built into this plan. It's not just about coastal resiliency. It's not just about rising seas. It's about resiliency in food, resiliency in energy. A couple folks mentioned the New Bedford plan. It's a little more comprehensive, and we really appreciate your feedback in the context and what you facilitated here in having a broader conversation about policies and about what we can do moving forward. And I think a big piece I take away from this is, we're faced by a challenge of climate change and sea level rise and those complexities that come from it. And our ability to change is we can change only as fast as our bureaucracy can change. And so I think, the expertise you have and we have as a community is about what policies we can put in place at a systems level to deal with climate change, to deal with sea level rise. We need flexibility in our institutions across a wide range of, preservation, affordable housing, ecology, development, economy, to be able to deal with that change flexibly, quickly. And so I would just encourage you and your team to think about that. We need some help with policy and how to move in a quick way. John Kerry said, we got 9 years to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We'd like some help here. We're sinking.
Yeah, really well put. And I think another reminder is that, the coastal resilience plan is one piece of a bigger puzzle, that involves mitigation. It involves thinking about a lot of other potential effects. Like I think we were just talking with Vince and Mary about, heat mitigation and planning for increases in heat. So I think it's good points, Tobias.
Yeah, and I can add in there, in 2006, our electrical usage was 71 million kilowatt hours. And in 2019, it was 171 million kilowatt hours. So almost doubling of our electrical usage as an island as a whole year over, from 2006 to 2019. So as we transition to renewable energy, we're going to have a huge load on our electrical system. And the electrical system is a baseline for a number of our systems that enable us to function as a society. And you can see that in a number of the other resiliency plans that have been put forward by other communities in Massachusetts. And so I'd hope that you would help us in some guidance in that regard. It's electricity, it's food, transportation. Those start to intermingle as we get further and further towards net zero.
Just to kind of comment on what Tobias is saying about these interdependencies, when we asked folks in our breakout group, what they thought would make it easier and more valuable to engage, the value add piece that got brought up was this idea of tapping into these other needs and these other passions. And I think recognizing the interdependence of coastal flood risk with all of these other pieces, because it is a whole community issue. And so I thought that was really good feedback and connected to what you just said, Tobias.
We have a lot of other folks who are sticking around. Other comments or questions? And I just want to be clear, this goes to the project team too. You do not have to stay at this point. This is my volunteer time. If not, we can certainly drop as well.
Trevor, I just had one more question, if you don't mind.
No, sure.
Which is that what as a community, I would hope that you've, I read a little bit about your background. You've engaged with other communities and and your team has a lot of expertise regarding planning. Where are we falling short as a community, or maybe give some feedback? I'd love some feedback as someone who's engaged in the community. Where are we falling short? What are some things we're missing? Are we not thinking big enough? Are we thinking too small? Are we missing some pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of expertise that's still on this call in terms of working around the country on these issues. So I'm by no means the most expert. And I almost think, falling short is almost the wrong way to think about it, only because, our team at Arcadis, we work with communities across the spectrum in terms of capacity and, the size of the government and the resources at their disposal. And I will assure you that every government is grappling with these issues and thinking about them in the same ways that Nantucket is, and trying to tackle these really thorny questions, right? There's no silver bullet here. There's no right answer necessarily. And so, it's really is a process, and the very fact that Nantucket, has really been undertaking this process for a few years now, and it is now doubling down and trying to take action, I think is a testament actually to being out front, and I do think I think Nantucket holds itself in comparison to the Bostons and the New York Cities and the Miamis of the world, but you're far ahead of a lot of your colleagues, I think, in terms of thinking through these issues. And it's not like the challenges that Nantucket's facing are easy, they're really significant. So I wouldn't, I know that maybe everybody feels behind, because I think globally we all are behind. But I don't know if Carly or Amy or others, you guys work all over the place.
I think the important thing here is the driving toward action, Tobias.
Yeah.
That's the lane you guys are in, and it's the best place to be. There are people who are, quote unquote, more behind because they're still sort of just grappling with what this is and what it looks like and what they should do about it. So
There's one other thing that just to add to it, and it's something that I'm trying to put forward as much as I can for the whole community. So everyone knows that I'm speaking with an accent. I'm not exactly here all that long, and I don't have a long history on Nantucket, but one of the things that I've seen working for the town is that there has been a somewhat of a history of being reactive. And I've noticed, and it's one of the things that I suppose I'm lucky, I'm benefiting from personally. The town is shifting position. It's not reactive anymore, it's being proactive. We're changing internally to try and be more, to plan more effectively for the future. And this isn't just for coastal resilience, this is for many other plans, like the HMP, the Hazard Mitigation Plan. That was an extremely proactive plan in its own right. Similarly, the town has a heck of a lot of history, and Holly and others, including Kim and Lisa Craig, are being extremely proactive in their plan for resilient Nantucket Designs for Adaptation in order to be able to preserve that history. That is an extremely proactive thing to be doing to look after our heritage here on this island. So it's partly a change of mindset, and then it comes down to, right, the big question, right, we've changed the mindset, now let's pay for it. And that's the next big question for me once we have a coastal resilience plan in place. If we move from, okay, we've got it, now let's go to implementation. The implementation, and that 10 years of implementation is going to be where we're going to need everyone and a massive amount of community support. So that's kind of one of the things, Tobias, I'm working forward towards and will ask for a lot of help on.
That's great. Very well put, Vince. I was going to say, I think to Tobias, that is, I think, where a lot of communities are hitting a wall is thinking about the funding question, and there's so much need, right? And you know, especially in the context of COVID, local governmental budgets are strapped, right? So it's hard to contemplate how to act in this fiscal climate. But again, you know, I think we're hearing good things out of the administration in terms of potential for investment. So hopefully, looking, you know, part of the CRP is looking at how to position Nantucket to take advantage of any, you know, existing, but any future federal programs.
Yeah, but maybe on that, Trevor, is it would be nice to hear some feedback. Like, there's a number of different things that, you know, we can direct funding towards. We're a fairly wealthy community. Where do we get some big bang for our buck? Should we be putting in high-speed broadband internet? Is that more effective? Is that a more effective solution to creating some more stability for our community to fund these projects, to build a little more resiliency into our community? It gets into a little more economic questions, but I would challenge your team to, like, think big. You know, my ancestors, you know, my great-grand people, you know, we threw tea overboard at the Boston Tea Party to create Nantucket so we could freaking trade and throw the British out. You know, like, we're a big place and we want big solutions. And so I challenge you and your team to think big, and, you know, let's burn the house down.
Great. Yeah, and we can respond to that in a moment, but yeah, Deanne, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
For some reason, Trevor, I don't have the raise hand icon. I don't know. So just one thought in planning. I mean, I found in our breakout session was very helpful, but when we came to the 100 years, there was kind of silence. And it just seems to me as a planner that you have to look ahead and say, where do we want to be in 100 years? And then you know how we can get there. But if we don't look ahead and have a vision of where we're going, it's hard to know what path to take. It's like Alice in Wonderland. So I would just hope that we would take the time and say, given these projections, what is our vision of Nantucket in 100 years? And how are we going to make that happen? And I don't know whether that's the plan. The planning process to me from this point has been kind of little steps. Well, we can raise structures, or we can do this, or we can do that. But I think it's important to take time out and say, where are we going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Extremely well put.
Thank you. I'll unmute now.
Lee's hand.
I'll mute.
I can mute you if you like, but anywhere, is there another
Lee's
hand raised?
hand. Yeah, Lee's hand is also up.
Lee, I don't know. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't. Oh, sorry, Lee. I mistakenly muted you by clicking. There you go.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. So I'm a summer resident and been coming to the island for about 40 years. And I would say the following is that, at least in our breakout session, there was a lot of discussion around a call to action. From my own experience, what makes islands like Nantucket so successful is their focus on preservation. And the energy that's involved in preservation is actually quite a bit different than what strategic views and proactive views you might have to do something that's more bold. And based on what I know of the problem, and I live on the South Shore and certainly am significantly impacted by all this, it requires something of a different mindset of, what are you prepared to do in the sense of take this on in a meaningful way and start to try to figure out what are the best ways forward and be willing to experiment and even fail with some of those experiments, but do something. Because unfortunately, sometimes what makes the island so successful may actually be its Achilles heel. And preserving such a beautiful island and things moving slowly is actually a good thing from a historic nature, but it's not a good thing when it comes to erosion. And so that's my only message, is that I think there's a lot of really great people that want to preserve what they love about Nantucket. But what's most important is to get the people who matter, who will make the decisions, think differently about this. And I think that's a big challenge.
Really, really good comment. I definitely, that was the theme that came out of our breakout as well, was kind of, let's be bold and experiment. We don't have to right out of the gate have the most extreme possible solution, right? And just fully invest in it, but we should be thinking about potential pilot projects and catalyst projects, ways to build momentum and see what might work and what might not.
And there are people that would participate in those things, even individually. This year along the South Shore, there are a number of people that were significantly impacted by a series of coastal storms. And it has many of us very concerned about, what is the island prepared to do and what are we prepared to do and what will we be allowed to do? So I would highly encourage the groups to say, here's what we know and here's what we don't know, but here's what we can test. And there are probably many people on the island that would be willing to participate in a meaningful way to carry on those tests.
That's very helpful to know too. Looks like we're losing some more folks. Is there any other burning questions, comments that folks would like to make?
I have that impact when I speak.
I just think everybody's getting tired and hungry, maybe.
Go drink and be merry.
Oh, Bruce, looks like you have a hand raised.
I do. I thank everybody for this brilliant discussion. I appreciate the comments. Tobias's comments are well taken and I think are important too. Not to minimize anyone else, but I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh. That's all right. That sounds good, Bruce. Seconded by anybody? Who seconds?
Second.
All right. Thank you,
well,
Mary Longaker and Vince, for putting this together. This was brilliant.
Yes, thank you, Vince. Vince is a true champion for Nantucket and for its resilient future. So we're all in awe of everything he does. And Mary, of course, too, if she's still on.
All right, well
right.
done. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.